Hey there, and welcome back to Nightmare Narratives. I'm so glad you're here with me again. On this channel, I share real stories from park rangers who've seen things in the deep woods that they can't explain. The kind of tales that might help you relax and drift off to sleep. Before we start tonight's story, I'd love to hear from you. Where are you listening from? Drop a comment and let me know. Now go ahead and get comfortable, maybe grab a cozy blanket, and let's wander into tonight's mysterious forest story together. Tommy's scream cut through the forest like a knife, then silence. Just the wind in the pines and my heart hammering against my ribs. I should have listened to my gut that morning. Should have turned around when the woods went dead quiet. Should have known something was hunting us. The snow started falling at dawn on December 15th, 1957. I was lacing up my boots when Tommy Caldwell came jogging up to the ranger station, all eager like a kid on Christmas morning. 22 years old, fresh out of training, and this was his first winter patrol in the Olympic National Forest. "Ready for our hike, Ranger Fletcher?" he asked, breath puffing white. "It's not a hike, son," I told him, checking my rifle. "It's a patrol, and in this weather, it could turn ugly fast." I pulled my compass from my jacket, Dad's old brass one from his logging days. The needle pointed true north, steady as always. This little piece of metal had guided me through worse places. Korea. The dark months after Eleanor left. The nights when the war dreams got so bad I couldn't tell if I was in Washington or back in that frozen hell across the Pacific. "What's our route?" Tommy asked. "Section 7. Haven't had eyes on it in 2 weeks." I pointed toward the tree line. "Check the old cabin, then swing by Miller's Creek." We headed out as the sun came up behind grey clouds. The snow was already 3 inches deep and falling steady. Our boots crunched with each step, and I could hear Tommy breathing hard as we climbed the first ridge. That's when I noticed it. The silence. In 8 years patrolling these woods, I'd never heard them this quiet. No birds, no insects, nothing but the soft whisper of snow and our boots breaking crust. "You notice how quiet it is?" Tommy asked. "Yeah, weather's probably keeping them down." But I didn't believe it. Birds don't just disappear, not like this. We kept climbing, following the old logging road. About 2 hours in, I tried the radio, nothing but static. "Base, this is Fletcher, do you copy?" More static, then something that might have been a voice, but chopped up and weak. "Just the mountains," I told Tommy, but I made note of our position. 8 years in the army teaches you to always know where you are. The feeling of being watched started around noon. You know that prickle on your neck when someone's staring? It was like that, but bigger. Like the whole forest was paying attention. I'd felt it before in Korea, right before an ambush. Your body knows things before your brain catches up. We stopped for lunch by a creek. Tommy poured coffee from his thermos, and we ate in silence. The kid was taking it all in, the snow-covered trees, the mountain air, the peace of it. "This is amazing," he said. "I can't believe this is my job." "Wait until January when it's 20 below and you're looking for some hiker who didn't make it home," I said. That's when I saw the fox, red fur bright against white snow, sitting maybe 50 feet away, just watching us. Nothing weird about that, foxes were curious. But then it did something strange and it stood up on its back legs just for a second, like it was trying to get a better look. Then it dropped down and disappeared into the brush. "Did you see that?" Tommy whispered. "See what?" "The fox. It was standing up like a person." I'd seen it too, but didn't want to spook him. Animals do weird things sometimes. We reached the old cabin an hour later. The door was hanging open, snow blown inside. I pulled out my flashlight and looked around. The place was destroyed, table flipped over, one leg snapped clean off, the metal stove knocked over, chimney pipe twisted like rope, even the floorboards were torn up. "Looks like someone had a party," Tommy said, but his voice was tight. I knelt down and studied the floor. Mixed with the snow were scratches in the wood, long, deep gouges that went right to the grain. Too big for a knife, too clean for an axe. "What do you think did this?" Tommy asked. I stood up and looked around again. The damage was too complete, too angry, like something had just lost its mind in here. Maybe a bear looking for food. But I'd never seen a bear do anything like this. Outside, I found the tracks. They were huge, maybe 18 inches long with 5 toes. The stride was massive, 6 feet between prints. Whatever made them was walking upright and weighed as much as a small car. "What the hell is that?" Tommy stared down at the prints. "I don't know, but it's big." We followed the trail for 50 yards before it disappeared into thick brush. The tracks were deep, much deeper than ours, and they were fresh. The wind was picking up, and snow stung when it hit your face. Time to go.
"Come on," I said, let's get out of here."
My compass was acting strange too. The needle kept swinging back and forth like it couldn't decide which way was north. In all my years, I'd never seen it do that. By the time we started back, it was getting dark. We were 2 miles from the station, an easy walk normally, but I had the feeling we weren't alone anymore. The footsteps started about a mile from the station. Heavy ones, keeping time with ours. I stopped and held up my hand. "What is it?" Tommy whispered. I listened. Wind howling through trees, snow falling so hard I could barely see 20 feet. But underneath all that noise was something else, something big moving through the forest, pacing us. I unslung my rifle and worked the bolt. That solid click meant business. Tommy's eyes went wide. "You think something's following us?" "Just being careful." We started walking again, slower now. The footsteps were still there, maybe 50 yards to our left. Sometimes they'd stop when we stopped. Sometimes they'd keep going, like whatever was making them was learning our patterns. "Ranger Fletcher," Tommy said, voice shaky. "I think I see something." Through the falling snow, maybe 30 yards away, I could make out a dark shape moving between trees. It was tall, taller than a man, but moving wrong, too smooth, too quiet for something that size. "Stay close," I whispered. The shape paced us for 10 minutes, always in the trees, always just at the edge of sight. Then it vanished like it had never been there. But the footsteps kept coming. We were half a mile from the station when I smelled it. Metallic, like old pennies, but stronger. Like the aid station in Korea after a bad night. Blood. "Do you smell that?" Tommy asked. We rounded a bend and found it. A deer hanging from a tree branch 20 feet up. Most of the meat stripped away. The snow underneath was red, and there were more of those huge tracks everywhere. "Jesus," Tommy whispered. "What could do that?" The deer was a big buck, maybe 200 pounds. Whatever killed it was strong enough to haul it up that tree like it weighed nothing. The cuts were clean, like they'd been made with very sharp claws. "We need to keep moving," I said. That's when I heard it. A sound I'd never heard before but somehow recognized, low and hollow, like wind blowing through a cave, but there was intelligence in it. It was calling to us. Tommy grabbed my arm. "What was that?" "I don't know, but we need to get out of here, now." The sound came again, closer, and mixed in with it was something that made my heart stop. "Marcus," Eleanor's voice. My ex-wife, calling my name just like she used to when I'd have nightmares. Soft and worried. But Eleanor was 300 miles away in Seattle. She wasn't standing in a snowstorm in the middle of nowhere. "Did you hear that?" Tommy asked. Someone calling your name." So I wasn't going crazy. Whatever was out there knew my name, and it was smart enough to use Eleanor's voice. "Marcus, don't leave me." The voice came again from a different direction. "Please." I gritted my teeth and kept moving. It wasn't her. Couldn't be her. Tommy was struggling now, stumbling every few steps. "I can't. I need to rest." "No, we keep moving. We're almost there." That's when I saw the lights. They were off to our right, through the trees. Warm, yellow light, like candles. They seemed to be dancing through the forest. "Look," Tommy pointed. "Someone's out there." I squinted through the snow. The lights were moving in a pattern, like they were trying to spell something. "Help," Tommy said suddenly. "They're spelling help." He was right. The lights were moving in formation, spelling out HELP over and over. "We should go to them," Tommy said. "Maybe they're lost too." But something about those lights made my skin crawl. They were too bright, too perfect, moving like they were controlled by one mind.
"No," I said, it's a trap."
"But they need help." "Whatever's out there, it's not human." The lights flared brighter, and I heard that hollow sound again. So close I could feel it in my chest. We ran. I don't know how long we stumbled through the snow, but it felt like forever. My lungs burned and my legs felt like lead. Tommy was right behind me, whimpering every time a branch snapped. Then I saw the most beautiful sight in the world. Electric lights. Real ones. The ranger station. We crashed through the door and I slammed it behind us, throwing the bolt. Then I went to the window and looked out. Nothing. No lights, no movement, no sign of whatever had been following us. "What the hell was that?" Tommy asked. He was on the floor, back against the wall, shaking. I tried the radio. Static. The phone. Dead. "We're on our own," I said. Tommy's face was pale. "What do we do?"
I looked out the window again. The woods were dark and quiet, but I could feel something watching.
"We wait for morning, and we stay alert." I made coffee and tried to think. Whatever was out there, it was smart. It could copy voices, make lights, track us without a sound. And it knew my name. Around 3 a.m, I heard them. Footsteps on the roof. Slow, deliberate, like someone walking around up there, but the footsteps were too heavy, too far apart. I grabbed my rifle and looked up at the ceiling. The footsteps moved from one end to the other, then stopped right over our heads. Tommy was awake, staring up with wide eyes. "What's it doing?" "Stay quiet." The footsteps started again, back and forth like it was pacing. Then I heard something worse. Scratching. Long, slow scratches like claws on metal. It was trying to get through the roof. "We need to get out of here," Tommy whispered. "And go where? It's a blizzard." The scratching got louder. I could hear bits of metal falling above us. "There's a storm shelter behind the station," I said. "Underground." "Can we get there?" "We'll have to go outside." The scratching stopped. Everything went quiet except the wind. Then I heard something else. A low rumbling sound.
It was purring.
"Jesus," Tommy whispered. "It's playing with us."
The purring got louder, coming from right above us.
"On my signal, we go for the back door," I said. "Don't stop. Don't look back." I counted to 3, then yanked open the door. Cold hit us like a punch, but we ran. Through the snow, around the building, toward the concrete shelter. I could hear it moving behind us, dropping from the roof with a sound like thunder. Its footsteps were massive, getting closer.
The shelter door was locked. My hands shook as I fumbled for the key. Behind us, I could hear breathing like wind through a cave.
The key turned, and we fell inside, slamming the door. Something hit the other side hard enough to shake the whole structure. We huddled in the dark, listening to claws scraping metal outside. Then the sounds moved away. "Is it gone?" Tommy asked. I put my ear to the door. Nothing but wind.
For now.
We waited until dawn, then crept outside. The ranger station was destroyed. Roof torn open, walls covered with scratches, our equipment scattered everywhere. And there were tracks in the snow, big ones, leading north into the forest. "We need to get help," Tommy said. I looked at the tracks, then at my compass, still spinning uselessly. "It's not done with us," I said. It's leading us somewhere." "What do you mean?" "Look at the tracks. They're too perfect, too obvious. It wants us to follow." Tommy's face went pale. "So what do we do?" I studied the destroyed station, the tracks in the snow. "There's an old logging camp 5 miles north. Might be equipment there, tools, maybe a working radio." "That's where it went." "I know, but we don't have a choice." We gathered what supplies we could, some food, water, first aid kit. My rifle was intact with about 20 rounds. The tracks were easy to follow in the snow, but they bothered me, too regular, like the thing wanted us to catch up. 2 hours in, we found the second kill site. A bear this time, huge one, maybe 400 pounds, hanging from a branch 30 feet up. But this was different. It had been arranged, posed. The bear's arms were spread wide like it was welcoming us. And carved into the tree trunk, 8 feet up, were symbols, not letters or numbers, something else, something that looked like writing, but from no language I knew.
"What does it say?" Tommy asked. "I don't know."
But I was studying the symbols. They were deep, fresh, sap still bleeding from the cuts. It was a message. We kept moving, following the tracks deeper into wilderness. The trail wound through thick brush and around massive trees. About noon, we reached the logging camp. 20 buildings scattered around a clearing, most falling down, but some looked intact, and there were tracks everywhere, like the thing had been living here. "This is its home," I said. We checked the workshop first, tools scattered around, axes, saws, hammers, and in the back, I found something that made my heart race. Dynamite, old, but it looked stable, blasting caps and wire too. "Can you use that?" Tommy asked. "I learned some demolition in Korea." We spent an hour rigging charges around the camp. If the thing came for us, we'd give it a fight. That's when we heard it. A low, rhythmic thumping from the main building, like a heartbeat, but bigger. "It's in there," Tommy whispered. I checked my rifle. "Stay behind me." We crept toward the building. The front door hung open, and I could see scratch marks on the frame. The thumping got louder. It was coming from inside. I looked through the doorway and saw something that froze my blood. The thing was there, all right, 9 feet tall, covered in dark fur. It was crouched over something, feeding. I could hear wet, tearing sounds. Around the floor were bones, human bones, old ones, picked clean. This wasn't just a hunting ground, it was a larder. The creature's head snapped up. For a moment, we stared at each other, those eyes, human eyes in something that wasn't human. Then it smiled, lips pulling back to show rows of shark teeth. "Hello, Marcus," it said in Eleanor's voice. "I've been waiting." I raised my rifle, but it was already moving, not running, flowing like liquid shadow. 1 second across the room, the next, it was gone.
"Where did it go?" Tommy whispered.
I scanned the room. The shadows were wrong, moving even though the light wasn't changing. They were all pointing to one corner. "There!" The shadow was too thick, too dark. As I watched, it took shape. The creature was forming right in front of us. "Impressive, isn't it?" it said in my own voice. "I've learned so much over the years." "What are you?" "I'm what your people call Sasquatch. But I'm older than your legends, Marcus. I was here when the first humans crossed the ice. I've watched civilizations rise and fall." "What do you want?" It laughed like breaking glass. "To hunt, to feed, to play with my food before I kill it." "And we're your food?" "You're my entertainment. I've been so bored lately. But you, Marcus, you're different. You've killed before. You understand the game." I thought about the charges around the camp. If I could get it outside.
"You said you knew about Korea," I said. What do you know?"
The creature became more solid. "I know about the village, the children, the choice you made when your officer ordered you to open fire." My hands tightened on the rifle. They were harboring enemy soldiers. Were they? Or were they just scared civilians? You'll never know, will you, because you followed orders? Shut up. Eleanor knew. She could see it in your eyes. She tried to save you, but you were already dead inside. I said, shut up. I fired. The bullet caught it in the chest, spinning it around. Dark blood sprayed the wall, but it didn't go down. It laughed. My turn, it said. The creature launched itself across the room faster than I could follow. Claws raked my chest, tearing through jacket and shirt like paper. I rolled aside, bringing the rifle up. The thing backhanded me, and I flew across the room, hitting the wall hard enough to see stars. Run, I yelled to Tommy. Get out! But Tommy was already gone. Smart kid. The creature stalked toward me, taking its time. You know, Marcus, I've killed a lot of humans, but you're special. You're already broken. Killing you will be a mercy. I tried to stand, but my ribs screamed. At least 2 were broken. Any last words? I looked up at those ancient eyes. Yeah, go to hell. It smiled. I've been there. It's not so bad, once you get used to it. It raised its claws for the killing blow. The building exploded. The blast threw me across the room. Debris rained from the ceiling and smoke filled the air. Through the ringing in my ears, I could hear the creature roaring in pain. Tommy had done it. I crawled through smoke and rubble looking for my rifle, found it under broken boards. The stock was cracked, but it worked. The creature was across the room, partially buried under a fallen beam. Hurt bad, I could see burns on its fur, one arm bent wrong. But it was still alive, still moving. I raised the rifle and took aim. This is for Eleanor, and for all the others. I fired. The bullet took it in the head, snapping its neck back. For a moment, it was still. Then it looked at me and smiled. You can't kill me, Marcus. I'm older than your nightmares. I'll always be here, waiting in the dark. Its form started to fade, becoming shadow. This isn't over. And then it was gone. I sat in the wreckage, shaking. The building was on fire around me, but I couldn't move. The creature's words echoed, it's never over. Ranger Fletcher, Tommy calling from outside. I'm here, I called back. He helped me to my feet, and we stumbled out of the burning building. The cold air hit like a slap. Is it dead? Tommy asked. I looked back at the flames. I don't know. I shot it in the head, but
But what? I don't think it can really die.
We walked away from the fire, into the forest. Soon there would be no sign we'd ever been there. But I knew the creature was still out there somewhere, waiting, playing its endless game. The walk back took 2 days. A trucker picked us up at the highway and drove us to the hospital. Doctors patched me up. 3 broken ribs, concussion, 40 stitches where the claws had raked me. The official report was simple. Bear attack, rogue grizzly, driven mad by hunger. My supervisor bought it. Why wouldn't he? I was a decorated veteran with 8 years of service, but I knew better, and so did Tommy. The kid transferred to California a month later, said he needed a change. I didn't blame him, but I couldn't leave, not with that thing still out there. The attacks started again in spring. Hikers missing, campers found dead. Always the same pattern. Isolated victims, bodies torn apart. I started spending more time in the forest, looking for signs. The other rangers thought I was losing my mind. Maybe I was. The final confrontation came in September. I was deep in the wilderness when I found it waiting in a high valley. Hello, Marcus, it said. I wondered when you'd come. I'm here to finish this.
Are you? Or are you here because you need this? Because hunting me gives your life meaning?
I couldn't answer, because part of me wondered if it was right. We fought in that valley for what felt like hours. The creature was stronger, faster, but I had experience. I'd fought for my life before. I used the terrain, the rocks, kept moving, kept it guessing. Slowly, I started wearing it down. The creature's movements became slower. Its wounds weren't healing as fast.
"You can't win," it gasped. "Even if you kill me, there are others will always be here." "Maybe," I said, raising my machete. "But you won't."
I brought the blade down with all my strength. It caught the creature in the neck, cutting deep. Dark blood fountained out. "This isn't over," it whispered. "Yeah, it is." The creature's eyes went blank and it fell forward, but then its body started to fade. "Not dead," it said, voice coming from everywhere. "Never dead. I'll be back, Marcus."
And then it was gone.
That was 20 years ago. I'm retired now, living in a cabin near where it all happened. Tommy never came back to Washington. Got a normal life, teacher, wife, kids. But I never forgot. And I never stopped watching. The creature kept its word. It came back. Not right away, but the signs were there. Missing hikers, strange tracks, that feeling of being watched. We've fought 3 more times over the years. Each time I've driven it off, but I've never killed it, not really. Maybe it can't be killed, maybe it's just a force of nature. But I've learned to live with it, to keep watch. I'm getting old now. My hands shake. My eyes aren't what they were. Someday I won't be able to patrol these woods anymore. And when that day comes, the creature will know. Last week I saw tracks near Miller's Creek. Big ones. The creature is moving again, testing boundaries, and tonight I'm sitting on my porch looking at the dark forest. The wind howls through the trees and I can hear something moving in the shadows. The creature is out there, watching me, waiting for me to get too old, too slow. But not yet, not tonight. I check my rifle, make sure a round is chambered. Then I turn off the lights and wait. In the forest, something howls, long and low and hungry.
I smile and rest my finger on the trigger.
Let it come. The end. I found the first body on Valentine's Day, 1962, what was left of it anyway. The bones were scattered in the snow like broken toys, picked clean despite the freezing cold. Rex, my German shepherd, found them first. He started whining about a mile out, his hackles up like he'd caught scent of something terrible. My name is Catherine Morrison. I'm a ranger in the Superior National Forest, Minnesota. Been out here 2 years now, ever since I couldn't stand the empty apartment in Chicago anymore. Everything there reminded me of James, my husband, who died in a car wreck 3 winters back. The forest doesn't lie to you like memories do. It's harsh, but it's honest. That morning the temperature was hitting 35 below. My breath turned to ice crystals before it hit the ground. Each step on my snowshoes crunched through 3 feet of powder that hadn't seen a human track in weeks. Rex belonged to James before the accident. Smart dog, could track a rabbit through a blizzard. When James died, Rex and I sort of found each other in our grief. Now he's all I got out here, and I trust his nose more than my own eyes. But that morning, Rex was scared, real scared. His tail was tucked, and he kept looking back at me like he was asking permission to run. "What is it, boy?" I asked, but he just kept that low whine going.
The forest felt wrong. You know how places can feel? Like they're holding their breath? The bare birch trees stood like white bones against the grey sky. Even the wind seemed careful, barely stirring the snow on the branches.
I'd been a ranger for 2 years, but before that I was an army nurse in Korea. 3 years of seeing what bodies look like when things go bad. I knew death, knew what it smelled like, what it left behind. This was different. We came to a clearing where someone had set up camp. The tent was shredded from the inside like something had clawed its way out. Sleeping bags were torn apart, feathers scattered like snow across the real snow, and that's when I saw the bones. They were arranged in a rough circle around the destroyed campsite. Clean bones, picked totally clean, but not by animals. I'd seen what wolves and bears leave behind. This was something else. Rex whined and backed away. I didn't blame him. I knelt down next to what looked like a human femur. The cold should have preserved everything, but there wasn't a scrap of meat left. No blood in the snow, just bones, white as the birch trees around us.
"Hello," I called out. "Anyone out there?"
My voice echoed off the trees and came back empty. Rex pressed against my leg, shivering. Not from cold. Rex had a thick coat. This was fear. That's when I noticed the tracks. They led away from the campsite, heading deeper into the forest. Human-shaped, but wrong. Too long, too narrow. And they sank deep into the snow, like whatever made them weighed more than any person should. I followed them for about 50 yards. Rex refused to come with me. The tracks led to a big granite boulder, maybe 10 feet tall. That's where I saw the claw marks. They were fresh, cut deep into the stone. Each groove was about as long as my hand and gouged out chunks of granite like it was soft wood. I put my fingers in one of the marks. Still rough, like whatever made them had just been here. I backed away from the boulder and headed back to Rex. He was looking up at the sky, and when I followed his gaze, my stomach dropped. The aurora was gone, completely gone. The sky was black as pitch, and even the stars seemed dimmed. I checked my watch. 10:30 in the morning. The sun should have been up, but the light was wrong. Grey and weak, like it was being filtered through something. I pulled out my radio and tried to raise dispatch. Nothing but static. I tried again, adjusting the frequency. Still nothing. Then I heard something in the static, faint, but there, it sounded like whispering. I turned off the radio and clipped it back to my belt. Rex was already heading back the way we'd come, but he kept looking over his shoulder. As we walked away from that clearing, I could have sworn I heard something following us. Not footsteps exactly, but something moving through the snow. Every time I turned around, there was nothing there. But the feeling of being watched never went away. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those bones scattered in the snow. Clean bones, picked dry in weather that should have preserved everything for months. I was back at the ranger station by dark, a little cabin about 40 miles from the nearest town. Rex and I lived alone out here. Usually, I found the quiet peaceful. That night, every shadow seemed to move when I wasn't looking directly at it. Rex lay by the wood stove, but he wasn't sleeping. His ears were up, listening to something I couldn't hear. Every few minutes, he'd lift his head and look toward the window. Around midnight, I tried the radio again. Still nothing but static and that faint whispering. I couldn't make out words, but something about it made my skin crawl. The next morning, I hiked back to the site with a camera. I needed proof. The clearing was different in daylight. The bones looked older somehow, like they'd been there for years instead of days. I took pictures of everything. The bones, the tracks, the claw marks. Rex stayed close this time, but he was still nervous. He kept looking up at the trees like he expected something to drop down on us. That's when I found the second campsite. It was about a quarter mile from the first one. Hidden in a grove of pine trees, this one was older. The tent was mostly buried in snow, but I could see the same pattern of destruction. Torn from the inside, gear scattered everywhere, and more bones. These were weathered grey by months of exposure, but just as clean as the first batch. I counted what I could see. At least 2 people, maybe 3. Rex suddenly went rigid beside me. His hackles went up and he started that low whine again. But this time he was looking at something specific. I followed his gaze and saw it. Movement in the trees, maybe 100 yards away. Something pale, too tall to be human. It was there for just a second, then gone. But I'd seen enough to know it was watching us.
"Easy, boy," I whispered, but my voice came out shaky. Nothing, just trees and snow and shadows.
But I could feel it out there. Watching, waiting. That night the thing came to my cabin and I heard footsteps outside around 3 in the morning. Slow, heavy steps in the snow. Too big to be human. They circled the cabin once, then stopped right outside my bedroom window. I held my breath and listened. Rex was trembling beside the bed, but he wasn't growling. He was too scared. Then I heard breathing, deep, slow breaths that fogged the window glass from outside. But the breathing was wrong. When I breathed out in the cabin, my breath made little puffs of steam. But whatever was outside was breathing out air so cold it made ice crystals on the window.
The breathing stopped. Then I heard something that made my heart stop.
James's voice, soft and loving, the way he used to wake me up on Sunday mornings. "Catherine, come outside, sweetheart. I've been waiting for you." I knew it wasn't James. James was dead, buried in a cemetery in Chicago. But the voice was perfect. Every word pronounced just the way he used to say it. "I'm cold out here, Catherine, so cold. Come keep me warm."
I wanted to go. God help me, I wanted to go to him. It had been 3 years since I'd heard his voice, and I missed him so much it hurt.
But Rex saved me. He jumped up on the bed and put his paws on my shoulders, looking right into my eyes. James's dog, reminding me that James was gone. "Come outside, Catherine. Join me. We can be together forever."
I covered my ears and closed my eyes. "You're not James," I whispered. "You're not him."
The voice changed then, got colder, hungrier. But I could be. I could be anything you want, Catherine. Anyone you miss. I grabbed my pistol and went to the window. Whatever was out there had moved away from the glass, but I could see tracks in the snow, the same impossible tracks I'd found at the campsites. "I know what you are," I said through the window. Laughter echoed from the trees around the cabin. Not James's laugh, something else, something that sounded like ice breaking.
"Then you know I'm hungry," the voice said. "So very hungry."
When morning came, the tracks were gone, like they'd never been there at all. But I knew what I'd seen, what I'd heard. Something was hunting in these woods, and it knew my name. The third campsite was too close to home. I found it the next morning, just 2 miles from my cabin. This one was fresh. The blood in the snow was still red. 3 tents, all destroyed the same way, torn from the inside like the people inside had been trying to claw their way out. But there were no people, just bones, picked clean as all the others. And the tracks. They led right to my front door. I stood in my doorway, looking at the deep prints in the snow. They circled my cabin like a predator sizing up its prey. I could see where it had stopped at each window, where it had pressed its face against the glass. Rex whined behind me. He wouldn't come outside, wouldn't even step onto the porch. I followed the tracks around the cabin. They stopped at my bedroom window where I'd heard James's voice. But there were other marks in the snow here. Strange symbols like someone had been writing in a language I didn't recognize. I went back inside and tried the radio again. The static was worse now, and the whispering was constant. But underneath it all, I could hear voices. Familiar voices. My mother, dead 5 years now. "Catherine, honey, come home."
My brother Tommy, killed in Korea. "Kathy, I'm scared. Please help me."
And James, always James. "Catherine, why did you let me die?" I turned off the radio and threw it across the room. It hit the wall and shattered, but I could still hear the voices. They were in my head now. I looked out the window and saw it, standing at the edge of the clearing, maybe 50 yards away. It was tall, so tall its head was level with the pine branches. Thin as a skeleton, but wrong. Its arms were too long, its legs too narrow. And its face. I couldn't see its face clearly, but I could see its eyes. Black holes that seemed to pull light into them. It was watching me. And when our eyes met, it smiled. Too many teeth, all of them sharp. I grabbed my pistol and ran outside. "What do you want, Aunt?" I shouted. It didn't answer, just stood there, swaying like a tree in the wind. Then it raised one hand and pointed at me. "You," it said, and its voice was like wind through dead leaves. "I want you." I raised my pistol and fired. The shot echoed through the forest, but the thing was gone. Just gone, like it had never been there, but I could still hear it laughing. That night, I barricaded the doors and windows. I pushed furniture against the walls, nailed boards across the glass. Rex helped by pacing the room, growling at every shadow. Around midnight, it started scratching at the walls, long, slow scratches that made my skin crawl. It was testing the barriers, looking for weak spots. "Leave me alone," I said through the walls. "Oh, Catherine," it said, and now its voice was right outside my bedroom window. "I can't do that, I'm so very hungry." The scratching got louder. I could hear wood splintering, nails pulling free. It was coming through the wall. I aimed my pistol at the window and waited. Rex was behind me, pressed against my legs, both of us shaking. The wall exploded inward. It came through like a hurricane, all claws and teeth and impossible angles. I fired every shot I had, but the bullets passed right through it like it was made of smoke. It grabbed Rex first. My dog screamed, actually screamed like a person. The thing's breath hit him, and I watched frost form on his fur. Then ice. Then Rex shattered like glass, just pieces scattered on the floor. I ran. I grabbed my emergency pack and ran out the back door into the forest. Behind me I could hear the thing destroying my cabin, tearing it apart board by board. I ran through the trees, stumbling in the snow, my flashlight beam dancing wildly. I could hear it behind me, crashing through the forest. It was enjoying the chase. I found an old trapper's cabin about a mile away. It was mostly collapsed, but there was still one room with walls. I barricaded the door and tried to think. The thing was toying with me. It could have killed me any time it wanted, but it was having fun. It liked the fear. I looked at my pack. Emergency flares, a bottle of grain alcohol, some matches. Not much, but maybe enough. The scratching started again at the door. The wood was old and rotten. It wouldn't hold for long. "Catherine," the thing said, and now its voice was James's again. "Don't make this harder than it has to be." The door splintered. I could see its fingers reaching through the gaps, too long, too thin, with claws like icicles. I opened the bottle of alcohol and poured it over everything. The floor, the walls, my pack. Then I pulled out a flare. "You're not getting me," I said. It laughed. "Oh, Catherine, you have no idea what I am." The door exploded inward, and the thing filled the doorway. Up close it was even worse. Grey skin stretched tight over jutting bones. Its mouth was too wide, full of teeth like broken glass. And its eyes, those black holes that seemed to go on forever. I lit the flare and dropped it. The cabin went up like a torch. The thing screamed, a sound like ice breaking. It stumbled backward, away from the flames. I ran past it, out into the snow. Behind me, the cabin burned like a signal fire against the night sky. I didn't stop running until I reached the road. The doctors said I'd suffered a breakdown. Too much isolation, too much grief. They had a name for it. Cabin fever. They said I'd imagined the whole thing.
But I knew what I'd seen. Rex was real. The thing in the woods was real, and it was still out there.
I stayed in the hospital for 2 weeks. They gave me pills to help me sleep, pills to help me forget. But every night I heard scratching at my window. Every night I heard James's voice. When they released me, I went to see Bill Harrison, an old ranger friend. He'd been in these woods for 20 years. He believed my story. Not all of it, maybe, but enough. "We've had reports," he said. "Campers going missing, weird sounds at night. The local tribes won't come into this part of the forest anymore. Say it's cursed." "What do they call it?" I asked. Bill looked uncomfortable. "Wendigo. Ancient thing, older than the trees. It's always hungry, always hunting. And once it knows your scent, how do you kill it?" You don't, he said. You just try to survive it. But I wasn't planning to just survive. Rex was dead because of that thing. All those people were dead, and it was still out there.
I spent the next month preparing. I read everything I could find about Wendigos, about the old stories, about the hunger that never ends. I learned that fire could hurt it, that it feared certain symbols, that it grew stronger in winter.
I also learned that it was already part of me now. The whispers in my head, the voices of the dead, they were real. The Wendigo had marked me, and now I was connected to it. But I could also feel its fear. It was afraid of fire, and it was afraid of being forgotten. I went back to the woods in March. I found the clearing where this all started. It was waiting for me. "Catherine," it said, not bothering with James's voice anymore, "I wondered when you'd come back." I could see it clearly now. It was huge, maybe 9 feet tall, with skin like old leather stretched over bones. Its eyes were black holes, and when it smiled, I could see all the way down its throat. "You killed my dog," I said. "I killed a lot of things," it said. "Your dog was just the most recent." I pulled out a bottle of gasoline and poured it in a circle around myself. Then I lit a match. "You're afraid of fire," I said. It laughed. "Fire can hurt me, but it can't kill me. I'm older than your civilization. I was here when the glaciers carved these valleys." "Maybe," I said, "but you're still afraid." The match burned down to my fingers. I dropped it, and the gasoline caught. A wall of flame sprang up around me, and the Wendigo stepped back. "Afraid of being forgotten," I said. "Without people to remember you, you're just another monster in the woods."
I pulled out my journal, where I'd written everything down, the whole story.
"I'm the only one who knows the truth," I said. "The only one who can tell your story."
The Wendigo moved closer to the flames. "What do you want?"
"I want you to leave. Find another forest. Leave these woods alone." It laughed. "And why would I do that?"
I held the journal over the flames. "Because if you don't, I'll burn this. And with it, your story. No one will ever know you existed."
For the first time, I saw fear in those black eyes. Real fear. "You're bluffing," it said. I opened the journal. "Try me." We stared at each other across the wall of fire. The Wendigo seemed to flicker, like it was having trouble holding itself together. "What do you want?" it asked again. "I told you, leave." It stood there for a long moment, then it nodded once. "But if I leave, why," it said, "I'm taking something with me." Before I could ask what it meant, it reached out and touched my forehead. Ice shot through my skull, and I heard James's voice one last time.
"Catherine, I'm waiting for you." Then the Wendigo was gone, vanished like smoke. I was alone in the clearing, surrounded by dying flames. But I wasn't really alone. I could feel it inside me now, a cold presence that would never go away. The Wendigo had marked me, claimed part of me. It was the price of victory. I left the ranger service after that. Couldn't go back to the woods, couldn't pretend everything was normal. I moved to Duluth, got a job at the hospital. Tried to build a life that made sense. The Wendigo kept its word. The attacks stopped. The missing campers, the strange sounds, all of it ended after that day in the clearing. But the whispers never stopped. At night, I could hear them. James's voice, calling my name. The Wendigo's hunger, a cold emptiness that no amount of food could fill. I started having dreams. Dreams of running through snow-covered forests, of hunting things that moved in the shadows. Dreams of hunger so intense it made my stomach cramp. I told myself it was just trauma. The doctors agreed. They gave me pills, therapy, understanding nods. But I knew the truth. The Wendigo had marked me, and now I was changing. I started avoiding mirrors. My reflection looked wrong, too thin, too pale, with eyes that seemed darker than they should be. I lost weight. My appetite changed. Nothing tasted right anymore.
The cold didn't bother me like it used to. I could walk outside in winter without a coat and feel perfectly comfortable. 5 years passed. I kept the journal, kept the Wendigo story safe. I told myself I was protecting people. But sometimes, late at night, I would read it and remember the creature's fear when I threatened to burn its story. Remember the taste of victory. Then one night, I woke up standing in my backyard. I was barefoot in the snow, wearing only my nightgown, but I wasn't cold. I was looking up at the moon, full and bright and beautiful. And I was hungry, so very hungry. I went back inside and cooked a steak. Ate it rare, but it didn't help. The hunger was getting worse, becoming something that food couldn't touch. I started taking long walks at night, through the quiet streets, past houses where families slept safe in their beds. I would stand outside their windows and listen to them breathe. And I would wonder what they would taste like. I looked in the mirror one morning and saw a stranger looking back. She was pale and thin, with dark circles under her eyes and a smile that showed too many teeth. She looked hungry. She looked like a Wendigo. I packed my bags and left Duluth. I went back to the forest, back to where it all began. I found an old cabin, miles from any road, any people. I told myself I was protecting them, but I knew the truth. I was going home. The Wendigo had left the forest, but it had left something behind, a seed planted in the one person who knew its story. I've been alone in the woods for 3 years now. I don't eat much anymore, don't need to. The hunger is still there, but it's changed. It's not food I crave now. It's something else, something warm and alive and full of fear. Last week I found myself standing over a deer I'd killed with my bare hands. I don't remember hunting it. I just remember the taste of warm blood, the satisfaction of feeding the hunger inside me. The deer wasn't enough. It never is. I can hear them sometimes when the wind is right. Campers in the distance, hikers on the trails. Their laughter carries through the trees and it makes my mouth water. I know I should warn them, but I don't. I just listen to their voices and imagine how they would scream. The Wendigo's hunger is patient. It can wait, watch, let the craving build until it becomes unbearable. And when that happens, when I can't fight it anymore, I know what I'll do. I'll hunt.
I'm writing this down because I need to remember not just the Wendigo's story, but my own. How Catherine Morrison died in the woods of Minnesota, and how something else was born from her remains.
The hunger moon is rising tonight, full and bright and beautiful. And I can hear voices on the wind, campers settling down for the night not 5 miles from here. They sound so warm, so alive, so afraid. I'm going to put down my pen now. I'm going to step outside and breathe the cold air and listen to the night sounds. And maybe, just maybe, I'm going to stop fighting it. And
After all, everyone has to eat, even monsters.
the end. Pete Rodriguez was still screaming when the thing tore his throat out, and I can still hear him 30 years later. The doctors say the nightmares will fade, but they're wrong. Some sounds never leave you, like the wet gurgle a man makes when he's dying, or how his blood sounds when it hits stone. Let me tell you what really happened in Devil's Hollow back in 1973. My name is Jake Thornton, and I was a forest ranger in Kentucky's Daniel Boone National Forest. 29 years old, born and raised in these mountains. My daddy died in the coal mines when I was 16, crushed in a cave-in that took 12 good men. I swore that day I'd never go underground again. Pete Rodriguez was my partner, 35, married, with 3 little girls at home. His wife packed his lunch every morning with notes that said, "Come home safe." Pete always showed me those notes, grinning like a fool. He was a good man, better than me in every way. It was May 1973 when we got called to check out Devil's Hollow. Campers were complaining about strange noises, missing livestock, the usual mountain ghost stories. Every hollow in Kentucky has legends. This one supposedly had evil spirits living in the caves. The Cherokee named it before they got pushed out. We started hiking at dawn, mist rising from the valley like smoke. The hollow stretched 2 miles deep, carved by Devil's Creek over thousands of years. Limestone cliffs rose on both sides, covered in mountain laurel blooming white and pink. Beautiful country, but something felt wrong from the start. "You feel that?" Pete asked, lighting a cigarette. "Feel what?" "Like somebody's watching us." I knew what he meant. The woods had gone too quiet. No birds, no squirrels, just the creek and our footsteps. In 8 years of ranging, I'd learned to trust those feelings. We followed the creek deeper into the hollow. Ancient oaks formed a cathedral overhead, their branches blocking most of the sky. The air smelled like honeysuckle and something else that made my nose wrinkle. My worn leather belt creaked as I walked, keys jingling softly. Pete hummed some Mexican song his mother used to sing. He did that when he was nervous. The trail wasn't on any map, just worn smooth by generations of feet. "My grandmother said these old hollows hold memories," Pete said. "Like the land remembers everything." "What did she say to do when the land doesn't like you?" "Pray and carry a sharp knife." I touched my grandfather's hunting knife and felt better. The old man had carried it through 2 wars and 40 years of mountain living. He'd also warned me about Devil's Hollow when I was small, something about never going there alone. The hollow curved left, following the creek toward a waterfall I could hear in the distance. The air got colder, and that strange smell got stronger, like sulfur mixed with something dead. "Jake," Pete said quietly, "look at this." He was kneeling by the creek, pointing at something in the mud. My stomach dropped when I saw it. A paw print the size of a dinner plate, with claw marks that dug deep into the earth. "Bear?" Pete asked, but his voice said he knew better. I studied the track. 4 toes, claws, the right shape for a dog, but no dog in Kentucky got that big. The print was fresh, made in the last day or 2. We found more tracks as we went deeper, always near the water, always heading the same direction. Some looked like whatever made them had stood up on 2 legs for a while. That's when I started getting scared. The trees changed to pine and hemlock, older growth that blocked even more light. Our voices echoed strangely off the limestone walls. Pete found scratches on a big pine about a mile in, long gouges starting 12 feet up and running down to eye level, 4 parallel marks too deep for anything natural. "What can reach that high?" Pete whispered. The scratches were fresh, sap still bleeding from the wounds. Whatever made them had claws like razors and could reach twice as high as a man. We kept finding more scratches, always on trees near the water, always the same height, always 4 marks. Too regular to be accidental. Something was marking territory, and we were walking right through it. The forest got quieter with each step. Even the creek seemed to babble more softly, like it was afraid to make noise. Every shadow looked like something crouching. "Radio check," Pete said, pulling out his handset. "Base, this is Rodriguez." Static filled the air, harsh and loud. Then underneath the white noise, something else, breathing, or maybe growling. Pete tried to clear the signal. "Base Rodriguez, please respond." More static. Then the growling got clearer. It was definitely growling, low and angry. Pete and I looked at each other, then slowly turned around. Nothing there. Just trees and shadows. "Equipment malfunction," Pete said, but his voice shook. We kept walking, jumping at every sound. That's when we found the circle. It was in a clearing 50 yards from the creek. 7 dead raccoons arranged in a perfect circle, their bodies positioned like they were sleeping. No blood, no wounds, just dead animals placed with mathematical precision. "Jesus Christ," Pete whispered, crossing himself. I walked around the circle, careful not to disturb anything. The raccoons looked peaceful, but they don't just lie down and die. They sure don't arrange themselves in patterns. "We need to call this in," I said. Pete tried the radio again. More static, more growling mixed with the white noise. This time it seemed to come from the trees around us instead of the radio. "Signal's blocked," Pete said. "Must be the limestone."
I knew that wasn't it. Limestone never made radios growl.
We took pictures with Pete's camera. Each flash echoed off the cliffs like gunshots, making the shadows seem to move. The temperature dropped suddenly, not gradually, but all at once. We could see our breath in the warm spring air. "Storm coming," Pete said, but there weren't any clouds. Fog rolled in while we packed up the camera, thick as cotton, cold as winter. One minute we could see the cliffs, the next we were in a grey void that muffled every sound. "Stay close," I said, grabbing Pete's arm. We headed back toward the creek, but everything looked different. Trees seemed to be in wrong places, the path looked wider, or maybe narrower. Even the creek sounded like it was coming from the wrong direction. That's when we saw the shadow. It moved through the fog 30 yards ahead, tall, dark, and wrong. Sometimes on 2 legs, sometimes 4. Too big for a man, wrong shape for a bear. It moved with purpose, like it knew exactly where it was going, like it was leading us somewhere. "You see that?" Pete whispered. I nodded. The shadow stopped and turned toward us. Through the fog I could see its eyes, yellow, like a cat's, but bigger and brighter and full of intelligence that made my skin crawl. It watched us for 10 seconds that felt like hours. Then it turned and disappeared like it had never been there. "We're getting out of here," I said, but we couldn't find the creek. The fog was too thick and every direction looked the same. We walked for what felt like hours, always going in circles, always ending up where we started. The shadow kept appearing around us, sometimes close enough to touch, sometimes just movement at the edge of vision. It never made sound, never left tracks, never seemed quite there when we looked directly at it. By the time the fog lifted, the sun was low and we were lost in a part of the hollow I'd never seen. The creek was gone, replaced by a dry stream bed leading to a limestone cliff. In the middle of the cliff was a cave opening, black as night and big enough for a truck. The sulfur smell was stronger here, mixing with wet dog and rotting meat. The smell came from the cave, drifting out with warm air. "We need to go back," Pete said. I agreed, but couldn't stop looking at the cave. Something about it pulled at me, calling in a voice I couldn't quite hear. The darkness inside seemed to move, shifting like water. Then from deep in that darkness came a sound that froze my blood. It was a howl, long and mournful and hungry, but not quite a wolf's howl, something else, something that had learned to howl by listening to wolves, but had never been one. The sound echoed off the hollow's walls, bouncing back and forth until it seemed to come from everywhere. It went on for 30 seconds, rising and falling like a siren. In the silence that followed, Pete and I knew we were in trouble. We found the main trail as the sun was setting, but the howling followed us, not constant, just every few minutes, like whatever made the sound wanted us to know it was still there. "We come back tomorrow with more men," Pete said at the truck. I wanted to agree, but my gut told me we wouldn't get the chance. The thing in the cave had seen us. It knew we were there, and it wasn't going to wait. Pete filed his report that night. Dead animals, impossible tracks, strange sounds. He wrote it all down, trying to make sense of something senseless. I went home and tried to forget the yellow eyes in the fog. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them. Every time I started to sleep, I heard that howl. The next morning, Pete called in sick. His wife said he'd been up all night, pacing and jumping at every sound. She was worried, said he kept talking about something that wanted to hurt his family. I should have gone to check on him. But I was scared, and scared men make stupid decisions. Instead, I drove back to the hollow alone. The forest felt different in the grey morning light. Trees leaned closer to the trail, shadows darker than they should be. I found fresh scratches on trees before I'd walked a mile, angry gouges that bled sap lower than before. Tracks were everywhere now, big paw prints in mud, claw marks on rocks, places where something heavy had crashed through underbrush. The tracks led in all directions like whatever made them had been running in circles all night. I followed the trail toward the cave, my pistol loaded and ready. The forest was quiet except for distant thunder. Even the creek held its breath. The cave looked different in daylight, smaller but deeper. The darkness inside swallowed light, impossible to see more than a few feet in. The sulfur smell was stronger, mixed with something that turned my stomach. I was studying the cave when branches broke behind me. I turned and saw something that made my mind struggle to understand. It stood 50 yards away at the tree line, 7 feet tall, maybe more, with a massive dog's head and a man's body, dark grey fur, almost black, and those same yellow eyes. But it wasn't the size that scared me. It was the intelligence in those eyes, studying me like it was figuring out how to kill me. We stared at each other for 10 seconds. Then it opened its mouth, showing teeth like railroad spikes, and made a sound between a growl and a laugh. I went for my pistol, but it was already moving, not running like a normal animal. It flowed like smoke, given form. 1 second at the tree line, the next gone. I spun around looking for it when I heard breathing behind me, hot breath on my neck, smelling like death and sulfur. I threw myself sideways as claws raked where my head had been. The thing was right there, close enough to touch, but when I rolled up with my gun, it was gone. Vanished like it never existed. For the next hour I played deadly hide and seek with something that could appear and disappear at will. It would show itself long enough to scare me, then vanish before I could shoot. Sometimes in my peripheral vision, sometimes breathing in the trees above, sometimes just a presence I couldn't see. It was playing with me, and we both knew it. I gave up trying to fight something I couldn't catch and headed for the truck. But the trail had changed. Paths that existed an hour ago were gone, replaced by thick brush that seemed to grow while I wasn't looking. The creek had moved, nothing looked familiar. I was lost in my own forest and something was hunting me. The attacks came in waves. The thing would appear without warning. In front, behind, above me in the trees, it moved through solid objects like they were air, phasing through tree trunks and rocks like a ghost. But it wasn't a ghost. When its claws hit a tree, they left real gouges. When it stepped on soft ground, it left real tracks. It was solid when it wanted to be, smoke when it didn't. I emptied my pistol 6 times and never hit it once. The bullets passed through its body like it was made of mist, but I could hear it breathing, smell its stench, feel heat from its massive form. By sunset I found the main trail, running on pure fear. The thing had stopped attacking, but I could feel it following, staying just out of sight. Watching. Waiting. I made it to the truck as rain started falling. My hands shook so bad I could barely start the engine. As I drove away, I saw something in the rearview mirror. A dark shape standing in the road, watching me go.
I knew it wasn't over. Whatever lived in Devil's Hollow had decided I was its enemy.
I didn't sleep that night. Every sound outside made me jump. Wind in trees, an owl hooting, branches falling. Normal forest sounds that suddenly seemed threatening. Around midnight, Pete's wife called, crying, "Jake, you need to come over. Pete's acting crazy, saying something's coming for us. He's got the girls locked in the bedroom and won't let me call police." I threw on clothes and drove to Pete's house. The porch light was on, but everything else was dark. Pete opened the door and pulled me inside, quickly locking it. He looked terrible, unshaven, wild-eyed, jumping at every sound. His service pistol was in his hand, finger on the trigger. "It's here," he whispered. "It followed us home."
What are you talking about?
"The thing from the hollow. It's been circling the house all night." I listened but heard only wind and normal house sounds. Pete's wife sat on the couch holding their 3 daughters. The girls were scared, clinging to their mother and crying softly. "Pete, there's nothing out there. You're scaring your family." "You don't understand. It's not just an animal. It's something else, something that hates us." Before I could answer, something scratched at the front door, long, slow scratches like claws on wood. Pete's wife screamed. The girls buried their faces in her arms. "You hear that?" Pete whispered. "It's been doing that all night." I drew my pistol and moved toward the door. The scratching stopped, but I could hear breathing on the other side. Heavy, wet breathing that sounded almost human. I looked through the peephole but saw nothing. The porch light was on, but the area in front of the door was shadow. I could feel something waiting. The scratching started again, louder. 4 parallel lines carved into the door, just like the marks on trees. The sound went on for 30 seconds, then stopped. "We need backup," I said. "Phone's dead," Pete said. I checked my radio. Nothing but static and growling. Whatever was outside was cutting us off from help. "Shotgun in the bedroom," Pete said. "Double barrel, loaded." I was heading for the bedroom when the power went out. Complete darkness, Pete's wife crying, girls whimpering, Pete's breathing getting faster. "It's trying to get us outside," Pete whispered, making noise, going quiet, making noise again. I found the shotgun, old Remington, well maintained, double-aught buckshot, enough to stop anything that lived. When I got back, Pete was at the window looking through the curtains. "It's out there. I can see its eyes." I looked where he pointed, but saw nothing, just darkness and trees moving in wind. "Pete, maybe you should—" The back door exploded inward. It happened so fast I barely had time to react. 1 second, solid wood and glass, the next splinters and twisted metal. The thing that had been hunting us came through like a freight train. In the darkness it looked even bigger, 7 feet tall, muscles like cables under dark fur, eyes like burning coals, claws the size of kitchen knives, teeth gleaming white. Pete's wife screamed and pulled the girls behind the couch. Pete raised his pistol and fired 3 shots, muzzle flashes lighting the room like strobes. I saw bullets hit the thing in the chest, saw it stagger, saw dark blood splash the wall. But it didn't fall, didn't even slow down. The thing looked at Pete with those yellow eyes and made a sound like laughter. Then it flowed toward him like liquid shadow. I raised the shotgun and fired both barrels. The buckshot tore through fur and flesh and bone. It screamed, part animal, part human, part something else, but it kept coming. Pete emptied his magazine, firing until it clicked empty. The thing absorbed every bullet, blood, streaming from wounds, but never stopped moving. It reached Pete as he tried to reload. One paw knocked the gun away, the other grabbed his throat and lifted him off the ground. "Run!" Pete gasped, looking at me with desperate eyes. "Get them out!" I fumbled for shells, hands shaking too badly to load. They scattered across the floor as I dropped to my knees. The thing holding Pete turned those yellow eyes on me and smiled. Actually smiled like it enjoyed the fear on my face. Then it opened its mouth and bit down on Pete's throat. The sound Pete made will haunt me forever. Part scream, part gurgle, part plea for help I couldn't give. Blood sprayed across the room, hot and thick. The thing dropped to Pete's body and turned toward me. I finally got the shotgun loaded, but knew it wouldn't be enough. Nothing was enough. "Take the girls and run," I told Pete's wife. She grabbed her daughters and ran for the front door while I kept the gun trained on the thing. It watched them go, tilting its head like a curious dog. Then it looked back at me and stepped forward. I fired once. Buckshot tearing through its shoulder. It barely flinched. I fired again, hitting it in the face, and it laughed. "What are you?" I whispered. It spoke in a voice like grinding stone. "I am what your kind forgot, what you drove from the light, the shadow that remembers." Then it came for me. I threw myself aside as claws raked the air. The shotgun flew from my hands and clattered away. I rolled behind the couch, but the thing walked through it like smoke. My hand found Pete's pistol. I knew it wouldn't kill the thing, but maybe it would slow it down. I raised the gun and fired, the bullet passing harmlessly through its chest. It grabbed my shirt and lifted me off the ground. Its breath was hot against my face, smelling like sulfur and death. Up close I could see its eyes were ancient, full of intelligence and hatred going back thousands of years. "You trespassed," it said. "You brought death to my home."
We didn't know. We didn't mean harm.
Ignorance is not innocence. Your kind never learns. It carried me toward the broken door. I knew it was taking me back to the hollow, back to that cave where no one would find me. But as we reached the doorway, it stopped, tilted its head, listening. Then it dropped me and turned toward the front of the house. Car headlights were coming up the driveway. Pete's wife had made it to the neighbors. The thing saw the lights and for the first time looked uncertain. "This is not over," it said, looking down at me. "You have seen too much. I will find you." Then it was gone, vanishing into darkness like it never existed. The state police found Pete's body an hour later. The official report said bear attack, despite there being no bears in Kentucky for 50 years. The claw marks were too big, wounds too precise, circumstances too strange. But nobody wanted to write down what I told them about a 7-foot creature that walked through walls. They closed Devil's Hollow after that, citing dangerous wildlife. The cave was sealed with concrete and steel, though I doubt that'll keep anything in that doesn't want to be kept. The Forest Service transferred me to a different district, but the thing kept its promise. It found me. Not right away. Took months, maybe years, but eventually it came. I'd see it in shadows outside my cabin, yellow eyes watching from the tree line. I'd hear it breathing outside my windows at night, smell its sulfur stench when the wind was right.
It never attacked directly. I think it was satisfied with what it had taken. Pete's life, my peace of mind, my ability to sleep. It just wanted me to know it was there, watching, remembering.
Pete's wife moved away with the girls, changed their names, started over somewhere safe. The thing wasn't hunting them, it was hunting me. I was the one who'd seen too much, who could tell people what really lived in dark places. I tried to forget, convince myself it was hallucination brought on by losing Pete. But the scars on my arms were real. The holes in Pete's door were real. The blood on his walls was real. And the dreams were real. Every night I'd see Pete's face before it tore his throat out. Hear him gurgling his daughter's names as blood ran down his chest. Smell the sulfur breath of the thing that killed him. I retired 5 years later, moved to Ohio, as far from the mountains as I could get. But distance doesn't matter to some things. The creature visits me wherever I go. Not often, maybe once a year, but always when I'm starting to feel safe. Last week I got a call from a young ranger in Daniel Boone Forest. Hikers found the concrete seal broken, steel bars twisted like wire. Fresh tracks led away from the opening, heading deeper into the mountains. He wanted advice about what they might be dealing with. I told him to transfer districts, maybe states. Find work that keeps him away from woods and dark places. He laughed, said he wasn't afraid of any animal. He had training and equipment we didn't have. Modern weapons, night vision, satellite communication. He was confident he could handle whatever was out there. I didn't try to convince him otherwise. Some lessons can't be taught, only learned in blood and nightmares. But I told him one thing. If you see yellow eyes watching from shadows, don't try to be a hero. Just run and keep running until you can't smell sulfur anymore. He hung up, probably thinking I was just another crazy old man. Maybe I am, maybe the thing in Devil's Hollow was never real, just guilt over watching my partner die. But the scars are real, the holes in Pete's door were real, the blood on his walls was real. And somewhere in Kentucky's mountains, something with yellow eyes and railroad-spiked teeth is hunting again, looking for new trespassers to teach old lessons to. The hollow is closed, the cave is sealed. But seals break, and the thing that killed Pete is patient. It waited 30 years for freedom, and now it's free. Pete Rodriguez never got to see his daughters grow up, never got to hold grandchildren or grow old with the woman who packed his lunch with notes saying, "Come home safe." He died protecting his family from something that shouldn't exist, and I'm the only one left who remembers what really happened. That's why I'm writing this down. Not because I want you to believe me, but because somebody needs to know the truth. The thing in Devil's Hollow took more than Pete's life. It took my peace, my courage, my ability to trust the world to make sense.
Sometimes late at night, when wind blows through trees, I can hear it howling. Not a wolf's howl, but something that learned to howl by listening to wolves, but never was one.
The sound echoes across years and miles, reminding me that some debts are never paid, some hunts never end, and some monsters never die. They just wait in the dark, patient as stone, hungry as winter, remembering every face that looked into their yellow eyes and lived to tell about it. God help whoever finds it first. I should have known something was wrong when I found Rebecca hanging from that tree. Not dead, not yet, but 30 feet up in an old oak, her jacket caught on a branch, her legs dangling like a broken doll. She was unconscious, blood trickling from her nose, and there wasn't a ladder or climbing gear for miles. That was 3 hours ago. Now I'm writing this by flashlight in an abandoned mine shaft, listening to something with wings the size of a small plane circling overhead. If you're reading this, it means I didn't make it out. But maybe my words can warn someone else. My name is Daniel Murphy. I'm 41 years old and I've been a park ranger in the Monongahela National Forest for 12 years. Before that, I was a soldier in Vietnam. I've seen men die in ways that would make you sick. I've watched friends get torn apart by enemy fire. I thought I'd seen everything terrible this world had to offer. I was wrong. It started 2 weeks ago when Dr. Rebecca Walsh contacted our station. She was a wildlife biologist from the university, studying changes in the local ecosystem. Smart woman, maybe 33, with the kind of serious eyes that reminded me of my sister Kate before the accident. Rebecca wanted to survey the forest around the old Centralia mining area, where underground fires had been burning for decades. There's something off about the animal behavior, she told me over coffee at the ranger station. Birds are leaving their nests early. Deer are gathering in strange patterns. Even the insects have gone quiet in certain areas. I knew what she meant. I'd noticed it too during my regular patrols. The forest felt different lately, heavier, like the air before a bad storm, but the storm never came. Rebecca needed someone who knew the territory, and I'd been walking these woods since I got back from the war. The forest was my therapy, my escape from the nightmares that still woke me up, screaming. Out here, among the trees and streams, I could forget about the helicopter rotors and the screaming, and the fact that I was the only one from my squad who made it home. We planned to spend 3 days camping in the deep woods, taking samples and measurements, nothing I hadn't done 100 times before. Just another research trip. I should have trusted my gut. Should have listened to that voice in my head that kept whispering, danger, every time I looked up at the sky. The morning we left, October 15th, 1983, was perfect. Clear blue sky, crisp air that made your lungs feel clean, and the leaves showing off their best colors before winter came to take them away. Rebecca was excited, talking about her equipment and theories while I loaded our gear into the truck. "You ever hear the old stories about this area?" she asked, as we drove deeper into the forest. "What kind of stories?" "Local folklore, Native American legends about flying creatures that could see the future. They called them messengers of doom." I laughed, but it came out forced. "You don't believe in that stuff, do you?" "I believe in keeping an open mind," she said, adjusting her recording equipment. Science starts with observation. The road ended at an old logging station about 10 miles from our destination. From there, we'd have to hike through unmarked wilderness to reach the study area. I knew the way by heart. I'd been patrolling this section for years, but as we shouldered our packs and headed into the trees, something felt wrong. The forest was too quiet. In 12 years of ranger work, I'd learned to read the woods like a book. The rustling of leaves told you about wind patterns. Bird calls warned of storms or predators. Even the buzz of insects painted a picture of the ecosystem's health. But today, The forest whispered instead of talked. Squirrels sat frozen on branches, watching us pass. A red-tailed hawk circled overhead, but it wasn't hunting, it was fleeing, flying hard toward the east like something was chasing it. "This is interesting," Rebecca said, checking her instruments. "The electromagnetic readings are way off normal." I stopped walking. What does that mean? Unusual electrical activity could be natural, underground mineral deposits, or it could be something else. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. In Vietnam, I'd learned to trust that feeling. It meant someone was watching you through a rifle scope. It meant incoming mortars. It meant death was close. But we were in West Virginia, not the jungle. What could be watching us here? The screaming started at 3:17 a.m. I know the exact time because I was awake, staring at my watch, when it happened. I'd been lying in my sleeping bag for hours, unable to sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt that presence above us, circling, waiting. The sound that woke Rebecca wasn't human. It was high-pitched, almost like a whistle, but with a wet, sick quality that made your teeth ache. It came from somewhere overhead, echoing off the trees. "What was that?" Rebecca whispered, unzipping her sleeping bag. I was already reaching for my flashlight. "Stay down." The sound came again, closer this time, like a tire screaming on pavement, but alive. I clicked on the flashlight and swept the beam across the trees. Nothing, just shadows and leaves, but the shadows were wrong. They moved when they shouldn't have, shifted and flowed like water, and there was a smell in the air, sharp and electric, like the moment before lightning strikes. "Daniel, my equipment is going crazy." I looked over at Rebecca's instruments. Every light was blinking, every screen showing scrambled data. The electromagnetic detector was clicking so fast it sounded like a machine gun. That's when I saw the eyes. Red. Glowing. 30 feet up in the canopy, staring down at us with an intelligence that made my blood freeze. They were huge, each one the size of a dinner plate, and they reflected my flashlight beam like mirrors. "Rebecca," I whispered, "don't move." She looked up and saw them too. Her breath caught in her throat. The eyes blinked, slowly, like it was thinking. Then they were gone. "We need to go," I said, already stuffing my sleeping bag into my pack. "Now." "But the equipment?" "Leave it." I'd heard that tone in my own voice before. In the jungle, when the enemy was close, when staying meant dying. Rebecca heard it too and started packing without another word. We broke camp in 10 minutes and started hiking by flashlight. I led us south, away from the old mining town toward the main trail. If we moved fast, we could reach the truck by dawn. But the forest had other plans. The trail we'd used that afternoon was gone. Not overgrown or blocked, gone. Where there should have been a clear path through the trees, there was only thick undergrowth and fallen logs. I checked my compass, thinking we'd gotten turned around in the dark. The needle spun wildly, unable to find north. "That's impossible," Rebecca said, looking at her own compass. Same thing. We were lost. In woods I'd known for 12 years. Somehow we were lost. The screaming came again, from all around us now. Not one voice, but many, a chorus of something that had never been human, calling to each other in the darkness, and underneath it all, a sound like massive wings beating the air. I grabbed Rebecca's hand. "This way." We ran through the trees, flashlight beams dancing wildly as we stumbled over roots and rocks. Behind us, the screaming grew louder, closer. I could hear branches breaking, as if something huge was forcing its way through the canopy. We burst into a clearing and stopped. In the center, arranged in a perfect circle, were 6 dead deer. They hadn't been killed by predators. There wasn't a mark on them. They just lay there, eyes wide open as if they'd died of fear. "My God," Rebecca whispered. That's when I felt it, the presence, directly above us. I looked up and saw something that couldn't exist. 7 feet tall, perched on a branch that should have snapped under its weight. Wings that stretched 15 feet from tip to tip, like a bat's, but wrong somehow. And those eyes, those terrible red eyes that seemed to see right through me.
The Mothman.
I'd heard the stories, of course, local legends about a creature that appeared before disasters, but seeing it in person was different. It wasn't just the size or the impossible way it moved, it was the intelligence in those eyes, ancient and alien and without mercy. It tilted its head, studying us like bugs in a jar. Then it opened its wings. The sound was like thunder. A wall of air hit us, knocking us both to the ground. My flashlight flew from my hand, spinning away into the darkness. In the brief flicker of light, I saw the creature drop from the tree, landing silently despite its enormous size. "Run!" I gasped, but Rebecca was already moving. We crashed through the underbrush, branches tearing at our clothes and skin. Behind us I could hear it following, not running, it didn't need to run. It moved through the forest like it owned every tree, every shadow. Rebecca stumbled and fell. I hauled her to her feet, and that's when I saw her face in the starlight. Her eyes were wide with terror, but there was something else there too. Wonder. Even running for her life, the scientist in her was fascinated by what she'd seen. "It's incredible," she whispered. "It's going to kill us," I said. We reached the ruins of an old mining camp. Rotting buildings and rusted equipment scattered among the trees. I pulled Rebecca toward the largest structure, an old dormitory with most of its roof still intact. Inside, the air was thick with dust and decay, but it was shelter, and right now, that was all that mattered. I found a window that faced the clearing and peered out. The Mothman stood in the center of the open space, wings folded, watching our hiding place. It knew exactly where we were. But it didn't come after us. It just stood there, waiting. "Why isn't it attacking?" Rebecca asked. I didn't answer because I didn't know, but I had a terrible feeling we were about to find out. We should have left the forest that first morning, should have hiked straight to the truck and driven away without looking back. But Rebecca had other ideas. "We can't leave," she said, examining the wreckage of her equipment. "This is the discovery of a lifetime." "This is a death sentence," I replied, checking my rifle. 20 years of military training doesn't just disappear, even when you're facing something that shouldn't exist. The Mothman had destroyed her instruments during the night, not broken them, destroyed them. The metal was twisted into impossible shapes, as if it had been heated and bent by invisible hands. Her radio was fused into a solid lump of plastic and circuits. "Look at this," Rebecca said, holding up her camera. The lens was cracked, but the film inside was intact. If even one photo came out clear, I knew that look. I'd seen it on soldiers' faces right before they did something stupid and brave, the kind of look that got good people killed. "We don't have any way to call for help," I said. No radio, no equipment, we're on our own out here." "Then we document everything we can and hike out tomorrow." "Rebecca, one more day, Daniel, please." I should have said no. Should have grabbed her arm and marched her back to the truck. But she reminded me so much of Kate, my sister, who died when I was overseas. Kate had that same stubborn streak, that same fearless curiosity about the world. I'd failed to protect Kate. Maybe I could protect Rebecca. "One day," I said, "but at the first sign of trouble, we're gone." The trouble started an hour later. We were examining the dead deer when Rebecca's backup camera began clicking by itself. The automatic advance was firing every few seconds, taking pictures of empty air. But when we looked through the viewfinder, there was nothing to see. "Electromagnetic interference," Rebecca said, but she sounded uncertain. The camera kept clicking. 17 shots in rapid succession, then silence. That's when we heard the wings. Not the thunder crack of the Mothman's flight, but something smaller. Dozens of somethings moving through the trees above us. I looked up and saw them. Birds, but wrong. Their wings were too large, their flight too silent, and their eyes glowed the same red as their masters. "Scouts," I whispered. The birds circled us for several minutes, then flew away toward the north, but I knew they'd be back. They were reporting to something, and that something was planning our deaths. We moved camp to higher ground, an old fire tower that still had most of its structure intact. From the platform we could see for miles in every direction. It was defensible, with only one way up or down. It was also a trap. As afternoon faded to evening, we saw them gathering. Not just the Mothman, but others, shapes moving in the tree line too far away to make out clearly. But big. All of them big. "How many do you think there are, Rebecca asked. I counted the shadows, tried to estimate based on movement patterns. At least 6, maybe more. A family group? Or a hunting party? The temperature dropped as the sun went down. Not gradually, like a normal autumn evening, but all at once. Our breath began to mist, and frost formed on the metal railings of the fire tower. "That's not natural," Rebecca said, checking her backup thermometer. "The temperature just dropped 30 degrees in 5 minutes." I was watching the forest below. The shadows were moving closer, circling the base of the tower. Whatever was down there, they were working together. "They're intelligent," I said. They're coordinating. Like a pack? Like a military unit. The attack came at midnight. It started with sound, that terrible screaming we'd heard the night before, but louder. Not one voice or even several, but a choir of inhuman throats singing a song that made your bones ache. The sound came from all directions, echoing off the trees and rocks until it seemed to come from inside your own head. Then the tower began to shake. Something was hitting the support beams below, methodical impacts that sent vibrations through the entire structure. I looked down and saw them, shapes moving in the darkness, too fast to track clearly. "They're trying to knock it down," Rebecca said. The shaking got worse. Tools and equipment began sliding across the platform. I grabbed Rebecca's hand and pulled her toward the stairs. "We need to get down from here." But the stairs were already blocked. One of the creatures, smaller than the Mothman but still enormous, perched on the steps about halfway down. Its eyes glowed like coals, and its wings were spread wide, blocking our escape. We were trapped. The tower groaned and swayed. Below us, the assault continued. I could hear metal bending, bolts snapping. The whole structure was going to collapse. "The zip line," Rebecca said, pointing to an old cable that ran from the tower to a tree about 100 yards away. It was a relic from the fire spotting days, probably rusted through by now.
"It'll never hold our weight."
"It's better than falling." She was right. The tower was coming apart beneath us. I could feel it swaying more with each impact. I found a pair of work gloves in my pack and tested the cable. Rusty, but still solid. Below us, the creature on the stairs let out a shriek that sounded almost like laughter. "You first," I said. "No, you're heavier. If it holds you, it'll hold me." I didn't have time to argue. The tower lurched to one side and I heard the screech of tearing metal. I grabbed the cable and pushed off. The ride down was terrifying. The cable sagged under my weight and I picked up speed fast. Too fast. The tree at the other end was coming up like a wall and I had no way to stop. I hit the trunk with my shoulder and felt something crack. Pain shot through my arm, but I managed to wrap my legs around a branch and hold on. "Come on," I shouted. Rebecca didn't hesitate. She grabbed the cable and launched herself into the darkness. Behind her, the fire tower finally gave up the fight. It collapsed in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. But the creatures weren't finished with us yet. The bone house was full of trophies. That's what I realized as we got closer, pushed forward by the circle of creatures that had surrounded us. The structure wasn't just built from human remains. It was decorated with them. Jewelry, watches, pieces of clothing, personal items taken from victims. Over the years, decades of victims. "My God," Rebecca whispered, staring at a child's teddy bear that hung from one of the bone walls. How long has this been going on? I didn't answer. I was looking at something that made my stomach turn. A set of military dog tags, old and tarnished, hanging from a rib cage that formed part of the doorway. The name was partially worn away, but I could make out enough letters to know. Jimmy Kowalski, my squad leader in Vietnam. The man who died saving my life. But that was impossible. Jimmy had died in the jungle, 10,000 miles from here. I'd seen his body, held his hand as he bled out. There was no way his dog tags could be here, unless... It can see the future, I said, the words coming out like a prayer.
Rebecca looked at me. What?
The legends were right. It doesn't just appear before disasters, it causes them. It sees what's going to happen and makes sure it happens. The Mothman tilted its head, as if listening to our conversation. Then it spoke, not with words, but directly into our minds. The voice was ancient and alien, like the sound of wind through a graveyard. You understand now?
The words hit me like a physical blow. I staggered, pressing my hands to my temples. Beside me, Rebecca cried out and fell to her knees.
I have seen your deaths. I have seen them many times. The woman falls from the sky. The man dies in darkness underground. It is written. No, I said, but my voice sounded weak. You cannot change what has been seen. You can only choose how it happens. The creature spread its wings, and suddenly I could see everything. Not just the clearing, but the entire forest, the underground mine shafts that connected like a vast spider web beneath our feet. The way the Mothman had been herding us, steering us toward this place. And I saw the trap. The bone house sat directly over the main shaft of the old mine. The ground beneath it was hollow, supported only by rotting wooden beams. One good impact and the whole thing would collapse, sending anyone inside tumbling into the darkness below. The woman dies first, then you follow trying to save her, as you saved no one in the war.
The words cut deep because they were true. I'd watched good men die in Vietnam while I survived. I'd come home to find my sister dead in a car accident that happened while I was gone. Everyone I'd ever tried to protect had died.
Everyone except Rebecca. Run, I told her, but she was still on her knees, hands pressed to her head. She cannot hear you. She sees what I see. The fall, the impact, the breaking of bone.
Rebecca's eyes were wide, staring at nothing, or rather, staring at her own death.
I drew my service revolver and fired. The bullet passed through the nearest creature as if it were made of smoke. It turned toward me, and I saw its face for the first time. It had been human once, but the eyes were wrong, glowing with the same red light as its master's, and when it smiled, I saw teeth like broken glass. The dead serve willingly. They understand the beauty of fate. More of them appeared from the shadows, dozens of them, all human once, now something else. I recognized some of the faces from missing person reports over the years, hikers who'd disappeared in the forest, campers who'd never come home. The Mothman spread its wings wider, and I felt the wind from its movement. Not natural wind, but something else. Something that carried whispers of the future. She will try to climb the great tree. She will fall. You will catch her, and both will die. This is how it ends. No, I said, and this time my voice was strong. I don't accept that. I grabbed Rebecca's shoulders and shook her. Look at me. Don't look at what it's showing you. Look at me. Her eyes focused slowly. Daniel? I saw myself falling. I saw you. I know, but we're going to change that. The creatures began to move closer. I could smell them now, the sweet stench of decay mixed with something electric. They were getting ready to attack. You still do not understand. I do not kill. I simply am present when killing happens. The future is already written. Then why are you here? I asked. Why show us this? Because the struggle gives meaning to the ending. It took a step closer, and I felt the weight of its presence, not just physical, but spiritual, like standing in front of a mountain that could think. The rage hit me like a physical force. This thing had been there when Kate died, watching, enjoying her death. It had been there when Jimmy died, feeding on the tragedy. I raised my gun and fired every remaining bullet at the creature. They all passed through it harmlessly. Bullets cannot kill inevitability. But they could distract it. While the Mothman was focused on me, Rebecca moved, not toward the tree like it had predicted, but toward the bone house itself. She grabbed one of the support beams and pulled, throwing her full weight against it. The structure groaned and shifted. The Mothman spun around, suddenly alarmed.
No, this is not how it happens.
Rebecca pulled harder, and I understood her plan. The bone house was built over the mine shaft. If it collapsed, it would take the Mothman with it. I ran to help her, grabbing another beam. Together, we pulled and pushed, using our combined weight to bring down the structure. The Mothman let out a shriek that shattered windows in the abandoned mining town 2 miles away. But it was too late. The bone house collapsed. We fell with it, tumbling into the darkness of the mine shaft. But so did the Mothman. I felt its massive body hit the ground beside us, heard its wing bones crack against the stone walls. This is not how it ends, the voice in my head whispered, but it was weaker now. Confused, I found my flashlight in the wreckage and clicked it on. The beam revealed a hellish scene. Bones everywhere, mixed with rotted wood and twisted metal. And there, pinned beneath a massive beam, was the Mothman. It was bleeding. Not red blood, but something black and oily that steamed when it hit the ground. One wing was clearly broken, bent at an impossible angle. You have changed nothing. You have only delayed the inevitable. Maybe, I said, helping Rebecca to her feet. But sometimes delay is enough. As the sun rose higher, the Mothman began to fade, not dying, but returning to whatever dimension it had come from. Its red eyes dimmed, and the terrible presence in my mind grew weaker. "This is not finished," it whispered. "I have seen your deaths. They will come to pass." "We'll see about that," I said, but I was talking to empty air. We made it out of the mine shaft just as the rescue helicopters arrived. Someone had seen the fire tower collapse and called it in. The official report said it was a structural failure. Old metal, too many years of weather and neglect. They never found the bone house. By the time the investigators arrived, there was nothing left but ordinary debris. Wood and metal and stone, just like any other collapsed building. But I knew what I'd seen, and so did Rebecca. The doctors said we were lucky. A few broken ribs, some cuts and bruises, but nothing that wouldn't heal. They treated us for shock and exposure and sent us home with painkillers and instructions to rest. Rebecca tried to tell them about the Mothman, about what we'd witnessed in the forest. They listened politely and made notes about trauma-induced hallucinations and the effects of stress on perception. Her film, when developed, showed only trees and shadows, no glowing eyes, no impossible creatures. Just an ordinary camping trip that had gone wrong. "You don't believe me," she said during one of my visits to her hospital room. "I believe you," I said. "I was there." "Then why won't you back me up? Why won't you tell them what we saw?" I looked out the window at the ordinary world beyond the glass. Cars and trees and people going about their normal lives. None of them knew what lived in the deep woods, in the spaces between what was possible and what was real. "Because they wouldn't believe us," I said, "and because some things are better left unknown." Rebecca recovered faster than I did. She returned to her job at the university, tried to continue her research, but something had changed in her. She'd seen too much, learned too much about the true nature of the world. She started having dreams, not nightmares, but visions. Glimpses of the future, fragments of what was coming. She'd call me in the middle of the night, whispering about disasters that hadn't happened yet. "It's still out there," she'd say. "I can feel it watching, waiting." I knew she was right. The Mothman wasn't dead. Creatures like that didn't die. They just went away for a while, returned to whatever dark place they came from. But they always came back. The proof arrived 3 months later. I was finishing my evening patrol when I found the envelope on my truck's windshield. No postmark, no return address. Just my name, written in letters that looked like they'd been burned into the paper. Inside was a single photograph. It showed Rebecca and me standing in front of the collapsed fire tower, but the image was wrong. We looked older, our faces marked by years that hadn't passed yet. And in the background, barely visible among the trees, was a familiar shape. Red eyes watching from the shadows. On the back of the photograph, someone had written a date. June 15th, 1991. Still 8 years in the future. I never saw the Mothman again, but I felt it, especially during the dark months when the leaves fell and the nights grew long. It was out there, somewhere in the spaces between seconds, watching the threads of time, and sometimes, late at night, when the wind was just right, I could swear I heard the sound of massive wings beating in the darkness above.